Union Station smelled like wet wool and impatience. Lena Torres clocked her ex-husband under the departure's board iron blue suit. That same entitled tilt to his chin-scanning faces like the whole terminal owed him something. Panic buckled her knees. On instinct, she stepped toward the nearest tall stranger in a charcoal coat. "Please pretend you know me," she said. He looked down with steady gray eyes. Then he opened his arms and she walked into them. His cologne was cedar and winter. "There you are," he murmured, just loud enough for Bennett to hear. His fingers grazed the back of Lena's head, a shield more than a touch. "You're safe. I've got you." Afterward, she remembered the noise first, the rasp of a rolling suitcase, the metallic shout of a conductor, and the holy hush inside a stranger's coat when the world outside was cold and ugly. "Keep walking," he said into her hair. Left, Lena breathed through a throat gone tight and let him steer. His hand never clutched. Two fingers guided at the small of her back. He angled his body to block her from view as they slipped past a pastry kiosk, then down a side corridor that smelled like bleach and pretzels. She risked a glance over her shoulder. Bennett Cross ex-husband, ex-dream, ex-life stood on his toes, scanning the crowd, mouth pressed into a thin, mean line. "Thank you," she told the stranger once a marble pillar hit them. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do." "Don't apologize." Up close, he was taller, with a quiet, contained energy like a building with its own generator. Dark hair, clipped short, no room for accidents. "Do you need to call someone?" Lena swallowed. She had no one to call. Her sister in Phoenix would melt with worry. Her closest friend, Hannah, was in the middle of a 12-hour shift at Northwestern Memorial. "No, I'm okay. Thank you." "He won't follow you in here," the stranger said, eyes tracing the corridor. "You want me to walk you out to Canal?" "I don't want to get you involved. Bit late for that." His mouth ticked almost a smile. "Come on." Outside, rain had turned into a mood. Canal was a black ribbon of cabs. The morning had shaken the color out of Chicago. Buildings sulked under a sky like wet paper. He lifted a hand and a matte black SUV glided to the curb like a trained dog. A driver in a cap hopped out, umbrella springing open. "I can't," Lena said automatically. "You can," the stranger replied as if correcting simple arithmetic. "At least for a few blocks, safer than the street." He said it so simply safer that she obeyed. Inside, heat softened her damp clothes, and the city blurred into muted watercolor through tinted glass. She noticed she'd left a crescent of makeup on his lapel. Mortified, she fished a tissue from her tote. "I'll cover the dry cleaning." "It's fine." He brushed the mark with his thumb, amused for half a second. "Where to?" "East 67th, she said, and hesitated. "Between Michigan and Wabash, near Grant Park." His eyes flicked, assessing turned curious. "You walk there sometimes?" "I do. Me too." He said it like a confession and didn't fill the silence with small talk. She liked that. Absurdly, she liked that he didn't ask her name, her story, her why. The SUV moved like a whisper. Her heart settled into a reasonable rhythm. On 67th, when the car eased to a stop, she reached for the door. "Thank you." She meant it like a benediction. "If he bothers you again," the stranger said, "call me." He slid a card from his inner pocket. The weight of it surprised her. Heavy paper, embossed, no title. Just a name, Adrian Cole, and a number. The name snagged at her like a half-remembered song. But he'd already tapped the glass. The driver opened her door, umbrella poised. "Take care, miss." "Lena," she said, stepping onto a sidewalk that smelled like wet stone and coffee. "Lena Torres." Adrian nodded once. "Take care, Miss Torres." The SUV softened back into traffic. She stood on the wet stoop with his card pressed to her skin, like a heat pack, and the strange certainty that the day had shifted on its axis. Somewhere under the surface, the city clicked into a new gear. Upstairs, her one bedroom was warming to the smell of radiator dust. She shrugged off her coat, kicked off her shoes, and only then set his card on her chipped thrift store table. The name kept tugging. She opened her laptop. The keys were the fingerprints of bills paid late and chapters drafted at midnight. She was finishing a part-time degree in counseling at UIC, answering phones at night for an upscale therapist in River North to keep her rent paid. She typed his name, results cascaded. Cole Group, Cole Capital. Boardroom photos that made him look colder than the man in the SUV. Headlines about a robotics acquisition, a philanthropy gala, a profile she read twice that included a candid of him at Montrose Dog Beach jeans, an old ball cap, a mutt with soulful eyes. She flushed with the absurdity of it. Then her body started to shake with the delayed tremor of fear and shame. Panic does strange math. You grab the nearest narrative that promises a door. A knock yanked her back. 3 quick, courteous taps. She froze. The second set, a notch louder, made her move. She peered through the peephole. Hannah, hair plastered to her cheeks, held a carton of soup and her signature pragmatic impatience. "Open up," I texted. "You're apparently in a dead zone where messages go to die." Relief warmed Lena from the inside out. Hannah set the soup on the stove and took in the room with triage eyes, damp coat, trembling hands, the card on the table. "Bad morning?" Hannah asked gently. Lena told her, halting at first, then in a rush that tasted like pennies. The hug, the corridor, the card. The wild reveal that her human shield was very possibly the Adrian Cole whose net worth started with a bay. Hannah whistled low. "You hugged Adrian Cole in Union Station to dodge your ex. Chicago, baby." "It wasn't a meet cute," Lena said flatly. "No," Hannah agreed, eyes soft. "But it might be a lifeline. Has Bennett been around?" "He filed a motion to modify alimony," Lena said, anger finally arriving like a clean line. "He wants to stop paying. Says I don't deserve it because I left a secure marriage." Hannah made a sympathetic noise and ladled soup. "You didn't leave a marriage. You left a velvet rope museum where only his portrait hung." A smile tugged at Lena, small but real. They ate. Outside, the rain freshened. When Hannah left, the apartment felt less haunted. Lena washed the bowl, wiped the counter, and just once traced the embossed letters on the card. She didn't plan to call him. By nightfall, plans were hypothetical. A gray sedan idled across the street longer than made sense. A figure in a hood loitered under scaffolding, texting with intent. When Lena took her trash down, a voice behind her said, almost gently, "You're hard to reach, Bennett." He had the look of a man convinced time owed him interest. "You can't avoid me," he said, like reciting case law. "I left messages." "You left threats," Lena said, steadying her breath. "And I'm done being an echo of your wants." He laughed softly. "I'm renegotiating alimony. Your lawyer, if you still have one, will soon discover I have excellent grounds." "What grounds?" "Because you've been living with a man." His smile showed courthouse teeth. "A very wealthy man." "What?" She blinked. "What are you even?" The sedan across the street rolled its window down a notch. A camera lens glinted. Lena's stomach dropped. The hug, the SUV, the umbrella. Panic did new math. She climbed the stairs on rubber legs, shut her door carefully, and sat at the table. The card waited, innocent and heavy. She called. He answered on the second ring. "Cole." "It's Lena from this morning." She surprised herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I wouldn't call, but I think I've complicated your life." "Unlikely," he said, not unkind. "What happened?" She told him. Gray sedan, camera, then its insinuations. On the other end, a pause as precise as a cut. "Stay inside," Adrian said. Warmth threaded through command. "I'll send someone." "I don't need. It's still raining," he said, and she could hear the one eyebrow lift. "Let me be polite." 20 minutes later, politeness knocked as a woman in a weatherproof jacket with eyes that saw through doors. "Sloane Park," she said, security liaison. Sloane swept the hallway, murmured into her cuff, and nodded as if Lena had passed a test. "You sure you want to stay here tonight?" "I can't afford a hotel," Lena blurted, then bit it back. Shame is a quick study. "You can afford safety." Sloane's mouth softened. "My boss is complicated, but he doesn't do half measures." Lena packed a tote in baffled silence leggings, a sweater, her battered copy of The Body Keeps the Score. On the curb, the black SUV again inevitable as a tide. The city slid by in a hush. They pulled under the awning of a Tribeca-level building, but this was Chicago. So call it River North, all glass and doormen who looked ex-military. The elevator opened onto a floor with exactly one door. Inside, cool, stone, warm light, a window longer than her apartment, and a quiet thrumming that Lena realized was the sound of money, the hum of Hivik tuned to human perfection in art that absorbed sound better than drapes. Adrian waited near a low, wide sofa as if he'd been there all day, which he had absolutely not. "Miss Torres," he said, and a smile moved through his face like a small storm breaking. "You look less terrified than this morning. Practice," she said. He gestured. Water arrived, then tea, then food she didn't know she wanted until it appeared in small bowls. Sliced pears, salted almonds, a folded omelet. He didn't talk until she was eating. She didn't realize until later that his silence had calmed her. "I can help," he said when she set the fork down. "But I should be transparent about my motives." "You have motives?" It came out more skeptical than she intended. "Always," he said without pride. He picked up a remote. A finance channel scrolled across a wall-mounted screen. The Chiron read, "Coal Group buys bid for Apexion after regulatory stumble." Beside it, a grainy photo of Adrian at a gala with a woman in a metallic dress. The caption was all smirk. "Billionaire bachelor back on the market." "I'm buying a company whose leadership fumbled compliance," he said. "The optics aren't great, the price is right. Shareholders are skittish. The press is doing its favorite Mad Libs. Greed, arrogance, man collects companies like Funko Pops." "Are they wrong?" Lena asked, sharper than she meant to be. He looked pleased, not offended. "Some days. Today, I'm trying to rescue an engineering division from men in suits who think code is a line item." "And where do I come in?" A knot tightened under her collarbone. "The photo at Union Station will surface," he said, pragmatic as a weather report. "If it does, the narrative tilts toward secret woman. I prefer a different story. Something honest enough to make us both comfortable and clean enough to calm the sharks." He folded his hands. "Will you pretend to be my girlfriend for 6 weeks?" Lena's laugh cracked. "You're joking." "No." He tilted his head. "In exchange, comprehensive security, a legal team that will teach Mr. Cross to spell boundaries, and a donation to a nonprofit of your choice." "What about me?" she asked, an old scar flaring. "Not my causes, me. We'll pay you for your time. Taxable, legal, decently boring. You're offering to rent my life." "To borrow your presence," he corrected mildly. "As a shield and maybe as a mirror." "Of what?" "The sort of man I say I am." His expression didn't change, but something in him did. "Someone who values people more than deals." "I know how that sounds. It's still true. 6 weeks. The money could finish her degree. It could break the calcified rhythm of survival. But his gravity had tides. Why me? You could hire a model." "I could," he said. "I'd rather ask someone whose life doesn't orbit mine." "And the power imbalance," she said. "Name the thing. Drag it into light." "It exists," he said, "simple as gravity. We manage it by not pretending otherwise. And if I say no, then I pay for your security for a week anyway," he said. "Because this," he nodded at the Chiron, "exacerbates your problem. My presence did that." "I'm responsible." She looked past him at the city, windows stacked like lit books, people making dinners, taking showers, texting apologies. She thought of the gray sedan, Bennett's voice, "You're hard to reach." The split-second decision to step into a stranger's arms because they felt like a door. "I want a lawyer," she said. "Good," he said, and the word warmed. "My counsel will recommend you hire your own. I can suggest names, or you can." "Mine," she said. "She's stubborn." "Excellent." This time his smile felt like approval of her spine, not her compliance. What followed moved with frightening efficiency. Lawyers, a draft contract with neat bullet points, public appearances. No physical expectations. Exit clause. Lone walking her through a security plan that made Lena feel like both a dignitary and a target. Lena texted Hannah a photo of a clause about boundaries and consent. Hannah replied with 5 hearts and 1 skull. "It's late," Adrian said at the elevator. "It is. We'll accidentally meet the press at Montrose Dog Beach tomorrow." His mouth tilted. "Looks casual. You can bring your book." "I don't have a dog," she said. "I do," he deadpanned. "Borrow his presents?" "You rent," she shot back, surprising herself with a smile. "Borrow," he corrected, serious again. 6 weeks. "If it's too much, the exit clause is real." "Why do I feel like you've done this before?" she asked. He considered. "Because I've had to manage people's imagination my entire adult life. This is a boundary, not a game." When the elevator doors slid shut, she watched his expression through the narrowing slit, composed, faintly tired, and, for a second, lonely. In the guest room, the sheets smelled botanical and expensive. She lay awake tracing the line between safety and compromise until the rain softened into sleep. Chicago cleaned itself overnight. Sidewalks scrubbed to anonymity. Lena, dressed in jeans and a navy sweater, braided her hair into nearly invisible armor. Downstairs, Sloane handed her a coffee and a tiny earpiece. "Just for the walk-in. Press loves to show up casually with 3 producers and a long lens." "Like a second-grade talent show," Lena murmured. Sloane laughed, bright for a pragmatist. "You'll be fine." The lakefront smelled like wet bark and cold iron. Adrian met them by the entrance, Lake Michigan pewter behind him. He wore a windbreaker, a baseball cap, and an ease that felt practiced and almost genuine. At his heel sat a lanky, dignified mutt of uncertain heritage, the canine equivalent of a resume. "Excellent. This is Moose," Adrian said. "Technically Augustus, but he responds to snacks and the sound of my shoes." Moose evaluated Lena like an HR interview and leaned into her palm. "Endorsed." "Good." Adrian said quietly, as if she'd passed a checkpoint. "Ground rules?" "Honesty within the frame," she said, lifting an eyebrow. "Exactly." A small tide of cameras rolled toward them. "Mr. Cole, are you buying Apexion for parts or people? Who's your friend?" "Miss Torres, how did you meet?" The sound of her name, God, they already knew, sent a cold ribbon down Lena's spine. Adrian's hand hovered near her back. Warning, promise, not a touch. He smiled the way powerful men are taught to smile, brief and spontaneous by design. "Good morning," he said. "This is Lena. We met in the most Chicago way possible. In a hurry." Laughter. Flash. The performative film on Lena's tongue tasted metallic. She decided to be artful with the truth. "Rush hour is democracy," she said, steady. "Everyone's late. Everyone's carrying something heavy." A good pause, then a ripple of chuckles. Cameras clicked. "Are you dating?" Someone lobbed. "Softball with spikes?" "We're spending time together," Adrian said easily. "We enjoy each other's company." Lena heard the careful distance and enjoy and added enough heat to crisp the edges. "He makes a decent omelet," she said. "Moose is the better conversationalist." The mini laugh Adrian wanted landed. Questions pivoted to deals and compliance and philanthropy. Relief shaded Lena as she drifted to the edge of the frame, watching Adrian do his job answer precisely. Deflect gently, admit imperfections where they were cheap. It was power choreography, and she half-hated that she admired the craft. When they'd fed the news cycle its minimum calories, they cut toward the quieter path by the water. Adrian relaxed by degrees, like unspooling measured thread. "You were good," he said. "I told the truth," she said, inside the frame. He nodded, hearing the echo. They walked in companionable quiet. A toddler in a yellow slicker toddled past, starstruck by Moose, whose gravitas dissolved under sticky fingers. "I've got an appointment," Adrian said. "Sloan will bring you by the office at noon. There's a grant meeting. I'd like you to sit in." "You want me to be a conscience?" Skeptical, not entirely unflattered. "I want you to be a person. Those rooms have too many roles and not enough people." Coal Group's headquarters was glass and light married in expensive, tidy ways. The conference room held a dozen people who looked well-rested in the way of those who can schedule rest. A woman with sharp cheekbones and a Prada notebook, Miranda Vale, head of communications, smiled with the warmth of a ring light. "Welcome," she said, as if unveiling a new product. "Miss Torres." "Lena is a guest," Adrian said, tone making it clear she wasn't a prop. Miranda's smile stayed professional, unreadable. The agenda was a stack of bullet points with very nice fonts. 3 nonprofits were up for a sizable grant, a coding boot camp for undocumented youth, a legal aid network for domestic violence survivors, and an arts education collective in Pilsen. Arthur Lang, the CFO, spoke in a soothing monotone about measurable outcomes. Miranda talked about stories. Adrian listened. Lena did too. When the discussion turned to brand alignment, something in Lena bristled. Sloane's gaze flickered, sensing heat. "Lena?" Adrian asked, catching the current. "A thought?" She didn't want to speak in a room designed to reward sleekness, but after the divorce, she'd promised to pick bravery over tidiness at least once a day. "You can measure exits and placement rates," she said to Arthur. "You can measure impressions and engagement," she added to Miranda. "But there is this other thing, which one makes a person feel like a person again. Silence, the kind that pulls chairs a half-inch closer. I volunteered with the Legal Aid Network after I left my marriage," she said, giving the truth a self-cover. "They didn't treat me like a case. They treated me like someone with a future." "I might be biased." Miranda's gaze sharpened a millimeter. Arthur clicked his pen like punctuation. Adrian took a breath. "Split the grant," he said. 50% to legal aid, 25 each to the other 2. "Revisit in 6 months," Arthur frowned, elegant and small. "We lose leverage with a split." "We gain people," Adrian said and glanced at Lena. "Find leverage somewhere else." After the meeting, Miranda intercepted with foul-stretched warmth. "You were compelling. Human. We'll schedule a profile next week. Work, studies, how you two met, what you value. The internet is a machine that chews and chews. Feed it, or it bites." "I'll check with Sloan," Lena said, smiling carefully. "Of course," Miranda said, lashes doing practice flutter. In the elevator down, Lena exhaled. "Dear people like you?" "They respect me," Adrian said without irony. "Liking is not a KPI. What about being liked by me?" The challenge slipped out before she could catch it. He turned, expression unreadable and interesting. "Not a KPI," he said, "but important." That evening, Hannah came over with Thai food and a squeal so high it clipped off at the edges. "You made a speech in a Billionaire's conference room and didn't die. I may yet," Lena said. "Miranda wants to feed me to the content machine." They debriefed in couch comfort noodles, sarcasm, and the balm of a friend who knows where the bodies and the batteries are buried. Hannah's pager buzzed. She groaned, stood, kissed Lena's head. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for setting boundaries and then filling them with your actual self." Later, Lena perched on the window ledge and watched lights blink on across the city. 6 weeks, she reminded herself. A contract, a frame. But the day had shifted the geometry between them. Adrian had invited her into a room and let her opinion cost him something. Gratitude warmed her in dangerous ways. Don't get sloppy, she warned herself. Gratitude, then obligation, then confusion about who owes what to whom. Down the hall, Adrian's voice drifted low on a call. We'll make the bid tomorrow, he said, control slipping just enough to sound tired. And if Cross is advising Apexian's board, we'll do it with more patience than he deserves. Lena went still, cross. She slid down the wall until she sat on the cool floor. In her mouth, pennies. The next morning, coffee tasted like competence. Lena confronted Adrian in the kitchen, which, unlike him, was entirely knowable. Knives arranged by size, a bowl of lemons trying to look accidental. Cross, she said. He grunted in a way that could mean many things. My ex-husband. I know, he said without flourish, without apology. Standard diligence on anyone connected to you with press risk. Bennett Cross advises Apexian's board through his fund. Lena's eyes burned. You didn't think to mention the man I hid from at Union Station is working the other side of your biggest deal? I hadn't decided what to do about it, he said, each word weighed. Recuse, change counsel, or keep me close. Acid sharpened her voice. Keep you safe, he corrected. Those might be the same thing. Yeah, that's the problem, she said, heart pounding hard enough to bruise ribs. I don't want to be a pawn. He studied her, long and quiet, not like a man looking for leverage, but like one searching for the right noun. I won't use you, he said finally. Not for this, not for anything. If you think I am, we end the contract today. She held his gaze until her own steadied. Okay, she said, because she believed him and because believing him scared her more than she wanted to admit. The day became a lattice of tasks, fittings for 2 charity dinners, wear something that feels like you, not like a mannequin, Miranda coached. Oh, the irony in a room full of gowns designed for mannequins. A short podcast interview. We met in the rain, Lena said, telling the narrow truth. A call with her advisor about a 1-week extension. Personal circumstances, she said. The woman's face softened, fluent in that dialect. In the afternoon, Sloan ushered her to therapy, an appointment Lena was stunned to find on her calendar. I didn't schedule this, she said. I did, Sloan said. With your permission in the contract. High-profile situations create stress. Therapy is part of your security detail. Lena let out a short, bright laugh. I like you. Dr. Eleanor Shaw had a calm voice and an office that understood the usefulness of texture. She invited Lena to sit, then said very little for 10 minutes. Lena filled the silence, the hug, the offer, the contract, the deal, the ex. What do you want? Dr. Shaw asked when the word count slowed. To be the person I am when I'm not scared, Lena said, surprising herself, and not to confuse gratitude with love. That's a clean sentence, Dr. Shaw said. Everything else is messy. Messy is expensive, Elena muttered. True, Dr. Shaw said. But simplifying yourself to survive is costlier. Outside, a man with a camera took 3 quick shots and pretended to admire a tree. Lena's skin crawled. Sloan simply stepped into the frame. Back off, she said. He did. That night they attended a fundraiser for the Legal Aid Network. The ballroom glittered, discordant against the stories in the air. Women who had packed bags in the middle of the night. Men who had left quietly because shame can be. The fundraiser ballroom glittered like someone had thrown diamonds into a fishbowl. Everything shimmered glassware, sequins, even the speeches. To Lena, it felt like walking barefoot on glass, too sharp against the stories in the air. Women who had packed bags at midnight. Men who had left quietly because shame is sometimes a louder jailer than violence. Adrian stood at the podium and gave his donor-friendly remarks, concise, careful, not a syllable wasted. Lena wanted him to risk more, to bleed truth into a room that preferred polish. The thought startled her. Why did she care? He wasn't hers. He wasn't supposed to be. After his speech, a woman with the posture of a journalist glided over. "Jordan Pike," she said, introducing herself. "Feature writer." Her eyes slid to Lena, sharp but not cruel. "And you're the surprise narrative, aren't you?" "The woman who met the billionaire at rush hour," Jordan offered, lips curved. "The woman the billionaire met at rush hour," Lena corrected lightly. Jordan's smile acknowledged the edit. "Would you talk to me sometime? Off the record, just to start. About what it costs to be adjacent to power and what it buys." Lena filed the request like a shard of glass in her pocket, useful for cutting ropes. Dangerous for fingers. At the coat check, Bennett materialized like a bad penny. He didn't look at her so much as through her, eyes studying the shape of her life as though calculating leverage. "Lena," he said, voice smooth as litigation, "you look well fed." Adrian moved a fraction closer, rearranging the air. "Mr. Cross," he said. "Ah." Bennett's smile shifted like a knife sliding into a sheath. "Your boyfriend." "Her partner," Adrian corrected politely, voice tuned to a frequency only certain men hear, a warning disguised as manners. "You work for Apicion," Lena said to Bennett, stepping forward so Adrian didn't have to stand between them. "Is that why you've been sniffing around?" "Because standing near me makes you feel bigger?" Bennett's mouth twitched. "I'm concerned for you. This charade will end, and he will drop you." "And what will you have then?" "Myself," Lena said, spine aligning to its old coordinates, "which is more than I had with you." A flush climbed Bennett's neck. Rage always colored him like cheap red wine soaking into white linen. "Enjoy your puppetry," he spat, then turned on his heel like a man expecting applause. In the car afterward, Adrian was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't fear silence. "Thank you for not speaking for me," Lena said at last. "I've been spoken for," he said, looking out at the city's cold glitter. "It makes you smaller in your own head." "Who did that to you?" The question escaped before she could reel it back. He gave a little shrug. "Everyone. Trust lawyers when I was 22, my board at 28, the press forever. I built rooms where I could speak and mean it." He glanced at her. "That's what I'm doing now. Buying a company? Building a room," he corrected softly, "where engineers get to mean what they build." That night, Lena finally slept without teeth in her dreams. But at 2 a.m. her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You'll never win. He'll leave you, and I'll still be here." Attached was a photo. Lena and Adrian at the dog beach, his hand hovering near her back, her face mid-laugh. The shot was so close it felt like trespass. She forwarded it to Sloan. "Got it?" "Tracking the number." "Do not reply," Sloan texted back. Lena didn't, but she stayed awake, watching the city until it grew new edges, the lake catching the first smear of dawn. The Apicion bit leaked like all secrets, do slowly at first, then all at once. The markets jittered like caffeine junkies. Adrian disappeared into glass-walled rooms where daylight was only a guest, while Lena rehearsed a life that wasn't quite hers. Fittings, photo ops, fundraisers, the choreography of accidentally being spotted at cafes and farmers markets. In the eddies between obligations, something private developed its own weather. She learned Adrian drank his coffee black and scorching, that he played old jazz while reading term sheets, that he loved moose with a tenderness that made her chest unclench. He learned she sang badly to 90s pop while doing dishes, that she never slept without socks, that she had a knack for finding the one park bench that felt like a confession booth. Boundaries held. The contract mattered. But intimacy has a way of seeping through cracks like rainwater. One stormy afternoon, thunder pounded the city like a fist. Rain scrawled angry cursive on the windows. Lena worked at the kitchen table, writing a paper on trauma-informed practice. Adrian paced a conference call, throwing sharp sentences at a speakerphone that replied with measured corporate platitudes. When he finally hung up, he looked like the storm had moved inside his head. "That?" she asked. "Then it's telling Apexion's board I plan to strip their engineering team for parts. He's playing savior. He's good at narrating his interests as moral imperatives." His jaw soured, muscles working like he was chewing nails. "He was always good at narrative," Lena said softly. "Our wedding vows? Bullet points disguised as poetry." Adrian looked over, sharp and curious. "Why did you marry him? Because he loved the idea of me? And I thought someday that would become the real me." She smoothed the stapled corner of her paper. It didn't. "Why aren't you married now?" she asked back. "I fell in love with building," he said, "and it loved me back just enough to ruin compatibility with mortals." "Sounds lonely." "Sometimes," he admitted. A crack of lightning lit the room like a flashbulb. Moose barked at the window as though he could chase off weather. Adrian rubbed his head. "We've got dinner tomorrow with Apexion's independent directors. Small, civilized, full of knives. I'll need you there, as a shield." "As yourself," he said, holding her gaze. "You remind me to speak like a person." The dinner was everything he promised linen so crisp it could cut, wine served at the temperature of old money, smiles sharpened for dissection. The directors asked polite, surgical questions designed to measure whose air they'd breathe if they sold. Adrian answered with a calm that looked like indifference, unless you noticed the stillness in his hands, deliberate enough to be a tell. Halfway through halibut, one director asked, "How do we know you'll honor the engineer's work?" Adrian's mouth opened, ready with a perfectly balanced, data-backed answer. Lena placed her hand lightly on his forearm, just enough pressure to anchor him. He looked at her, then shut his mouth. And when he spoke, it wasn't corporate language. It was human. Because the first thing I ever built, and the only thing I ever loved that wasn't a person, was an engine. It worked once on a table at 2 a.m. in my college lab, and it made me cry. When executives destroyed something I worked on later for profit, I promised myself I'd never let a spreadsheet ruin code again if I could help it. The table temperature changed. Directors who spent lifetimes swallowing the narrative of soulless billionaire versus brilliant engineers recalibrated a few degrees toward trust. Later, under string lights that pretended New York glamour had migrated to Chicago, Adrian murmured, "You did that." "I didn't say anything," she said. "You told me to," he said, glancing at her hand, still resting on his arm. The air thickened. Neither moved, and then Lena pulled back. "We're careful," she whispered to herself more than him. "We are," he agreed. But his voice sounded like a man standing outside a locked door, listening. The next morning, internet chewed on a new bone, a leaked internal memo. Not a blog rumor, not paparazzi, an actual cold group document, complete with bullet points and PR jargon. Lena read it standing in the kitchen, blood draining cold. Leverage Miss Torse's narrative, rescue and rain storyline. Humanizing asset to soften regulatory scrutiny. Coordinate paparazzi placements in low-conflict settings. Dog beach, farmer's market. Coach on relatable anecdotes. Student loans, sister in Phoenix. Her sister on a memo. Her life reduced to bullet points. Adrian burst in 2 minutes later, rain still dripping off his coat fast enough that Lena knew he'd run. He saw the laptop, saw her face, and froze. "You knew?" she demanded, voice oddly quiet. "I knew there were plans," he admitted, throat working. "I didn't know this, that they used my sister's name like a prop, that they pitched tipping off photographers like we're staging a mugging." Her laugh cracked. "Except we are." "Lena," he turned toward Miranda, who had arrived with the precise calm of a PR general marching into war. "You wrote this?" "My team did," Miranda said coolly, "with my oversight. We're protecting the company, the board." Her eyes flicked at Lena, Her incidentally. Incidentally? Lena repeated, poison rising in her throat. I'm not incidental to myself. This is how the sausage is made, Miranda said crisply. You signed the contract. Don't act shocked there's casing. Something inside Adrian went very still. His stillness was scarier than rage. You're fired. Miranda's lips parted in disbelief, then snapped shut like a trap. You can't. I just did. HR will process your exit. Arthur will absorb your team. And for what it's worth, he said, voice like a blade, I'm sorry I built a room where you thought this was acceptable. Miranda left without grace. The apartment felt suddenly larger, like lungs after a cough. Adrian turned back to Lena. I'm sorry, he said, voice softer now. I can undo a hire with a sentence. I can't undo what that memo did to you. Good, Lena said, trembling but clear. Then don't try to fix me. Fix the machine. He nodded once, like someone taking orders for the first time in years. Then he hesitated, reached, stopped. May I sit? Fragile as a child asking permission, he gestured to the chair. She let him sit, but her pulse was iron. I need to go, she said. For a while. He nodded again, no resistance. Where? My place. I want to hear how my own kitchen sounds. I'll send Sloan. No, I'll manage. He swallowed that like medicine. I'll file the restraining order against Bennett. Then I won't call you. His eyes closed briefly, like someone shutting off a light. Okay. And that was when Lena realized. For the first time, he wasn't negotiating. He was just letting her go. That night, her own apartment smelled like dust and lemons and independence. She scrubbed the counter as if she could erase bullet points off her skin. She cried in furious bursts, short and sharp like a drill breaking through tile. Hannah arrived with wine, eyes like a shield. Show me the memo, she demanded. Lena did. Hannah read it, then let out a scream that belonged in elevators and horror movies. I want to fight Miranda with a spoon. Adrian fired her. Good, but he built a world where she knew how to write this. He has to unbuild it. He said that, Lena admitted, hating the threat of defense in her voice. Hannah squeezed her knee. It's okay to love the better version of a man who's still becoming. It's also okay to make him do the becoming without you holding flashcards. 3 days later, Jordan Pike called. I've seen the memo. I'm writing. Do you want to go on record? Yes, Lena said, spine steadier than she felt. But print his corrections too. He fired her. He admitted he was wrong. Jordan promised fairness. And when the story ran, it hit like thunder across the internet. When charity meets strategy, the woman in the Billionaire's frame speaks. It quoted Lena's words carefully. It quoted Adrian's apology in full sentences, not PR scraps. It quoted Miranda, furious and polished, from a call that was supposed to be off the record and clearly wasn't. The comment, sections Miracle of Miracles, were messy but thoughtful. Faith and cynicism fought, but for once without knives. Adrian didn't call. He sent an email. I won't try to buy forgiveness with optics. I'm changing process, not headlines. If you want receipts, you'll get them. If you never want to see them, you won't. I'm sorry. Lena read it 3 times. It wasn't a performance. It was an admission. And for the first time since Union Station, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, Adrian Cole could learn to build a different kind of room. The Apexion vote loomed like weather, but another storm hit first. Bennett sued. Cross v. Cole Group. His claim, defamation, character assassination, media manipulation. In other words, a tantrum in legal filing form. The suit was flimsy but sticky like sap. It threatened to pull Lena into depositions where lawyers could turn her life into a public archive. Adrian's legal team moved like cavalry, but Lena still woke at night convinced she'd be picked apart under fluorescent lights. On the morning of the first hearing, the courthouse steps were slick with rain. Lena stood on granite harder than her shoes, heart doing double time. cameras angled like vultures. You okay? Jordan Pike asked softly, recorder in her pocket, but off. No, Lena said, but I'm ready. Adrian arrived with a face that had learned a new calm. He didn't take her hand. He didn't need to. He stood close enough to borrow courage by osmosis, far enough to keep cameras from spinning another narrative. Inside, the judge wasted no time. This is a courtroom, not a press junket, he said before Bennett's lawyer could warm up. Still, the man performed, underlining words like manipulation and charade, as though bolding them made them true. Lena's lawyer, stubborn, magnificent, stood and dismantled each claim like pulling threads from cheap fabric. She read the leaked memo into the record. She laid out the restraining order filings, the burner phone texts, the pattern of harassment. She closed with a line that hung in the air. My client is not a narrative. She is a person who refused to keep being someone else's alibi. The judge dismissed the case with the weary efficiency of a man who seen too many toxic divorces dressed up as civil suits. His gavel sounded like punctuation. Outside, microphones lunged. Jordan's eyes were bright with a rare glimmer of human victory. She didn't have to ask the question. It was written across every camera lens. What now? Weena straightened, breath steady. Some of us have exes who aren't adversaries but habits, she said. We break them by believing ourselves. The law helps. Friends help. Money helps. But mostly we have to stop making ourselves smaller on purpose. A murmur rippled through the crowd, the kind that means a sentence found a home. Adrian looked at her like a man who had just seen water after days in the desert. She didn't look back. Because you can't drink and speak at the same time. That night, on the same park bench where Moose had first dropped a ball in her lap, Lena said it. I love you. She said it simply, the way you tell someone the weather. Then, with all the steel in her voice, but I will leave if you become a room that asks me to be someone else. Adrian closed his eyes like a man receiving sacrament. When he opened them, the softness there made her ribs ache. I love you, he said, and I will build rooms where both of us fit. Moose sneezed at the exact right time, like a furry exclamation mark. Redemption didn't arrive like a fairy tale. It showed up as PDFs in Lena's inbox, updated policies, signed and dated, engineers' names added to shipping credits. A fat check wired to the legal aid network. Adrian stepping back from CEO to chairman, so someone who loved governance could take the wheel. It was receipts, not speeches. It was also messy. They fought. Once about a dinner where Adrian gave a bland answer on antitrust because being interesting might cost leverage. Lena told him the blandness tasted like cowardice. He told her leverage fed people. She told him the machine was a god he didn't have to worship anymore. He didn't speak to her for 2 hours. Then he showed up at her door with a printed schedule showing actual reforms and said, You were right about the god. They fought again about her fear. One morning, she woke certain he'd leave, because men with choices leave when dependence shows. He said, I don't need to control your dependence. I need you to tell me when it's happening, so we can feed your independence together. She told him, that's the most corporate sentence anyone's ever made sound like love. He laughed. Then he cried. And she loved him harder for it. They visited Phoenix. Lena's sister Bay made enchiladas and didn't stop scrutinizing Adrian until Moose, yes, he traveled, planted himself on his foot, and refused to budge. Adrian washed dishes in B, chipped sink, and asked about the school fundraiser like someone who understood $1,000 could be a miracle. B nodded at Lena when he wasn't looking, a sister's blessing disguised as a civic permit. They did press sparingly. When Jordan asked for a follow-up profile, they gave it together. The headline landed with grace, the billionaire and the woman who said no, policy, power, and the price of slow love. The comment section was still messy. Humans are messy, but the ratio of thoughtful Too cruel tilted higher than Lena had thought possible on the internet. On the anniversary of the Union Station hug, they went back. The terminal smelled like warm metal and bad coffee. People rushed by with math on their faces. Adrian led her down the same bleach and pretzel corridor. "Thank you for never pretending I saved you," he said. "You didn't," Lena replied with a smile. "You gave me a ride." "I saved me. And then you saved me from pretending rides count as rescues." They stood there a moment, under the din of trains, two people who had learned the difference between safety and savior. Adrian reached for her hand the way you do when you stop thinking about reaching. No cameras, no contract. Just skin and warmth. "Do you ever think about the baseball cap version?" he asked. "I live there when I need air," she said. Moose drops a ball. "You apologize. I tell you it's unnecessary. We talk about jazz and noodles. 6 weeks later, you bring coffee without asking." He held up a bag of beans he'd bought at a kiosk. "Look, we did." She laughed, kissed him once quick, like breathing. A tourist bumped into them, muttered sorry, and kept going. Moose barked once, perfect punctuation. The city kept moving, but for Lina and Adrian, it had stopped being a machine. It had become a habitat. She finished her degree, began counseling women who needed to hear themselves more than they needed advice. He paid himself less, slept more, built scholarships instead of strategies. They kept promises. They broke habits. They learned to fight in the right key. And on a morning that had the courtesy to be bright, Lena looked at him across their kitchen and thought, "I didn't fall in love with a billionaire. I fell in love with a man who built rooms, then learned how to let light in." She hugged him, unafraid of what a camera might do to love that had nothing to sell. By the following spring, the city had mostly stopped caring about the billionaire and the woman from Union Station, which meant, of course, the internet cared more than ever. It started when someone at Montrose Dog Beach filmed Moose stealing a frisbee from 3 teenagers and refusing to give it back unless Lena bribed him with a pretzel. The clip went viral in 24 hours. Comments ranged from, "That's Miss Cole," "Chicago royalty now," "Forget Apexion," "I want whatever company this dog is running," "Protect Lena at all costs," "She deserves federal witness protection from men in suits." Memes sprouted like dandelions. One side by side, Adrian in a boardroom, captioned, "How the media sees him." Adrian in jeans, holding Moose's leash, captioned, "How Lena sees him." Adrian hated it. Lena laughed until she choked. Moose basked in his influencer era. The scholarship fund Adrian had started with the legal aid network filled faster than anyone predicted. Former clients, women and men who'd rebuilt lives from rubble, sent emails of thanks, sometimes in all caps, sometimes with photos of diplomas. Lena read them aloud in their kitchen, and every time she did, Adrian got that look. The one that was half relief, half humility, like a man finally realizing leverage wasn't the only currency worth hoarding. One evening, she caught him scrolling the messages long after midnight, glasses sliding down his nose. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. Then he hesitated, a rare glitch. This feels like building something that doesn't collapse when you walk away." She kissed his temple. "That's because it's not about you." He laughed, low and honest. "God, that's a relief." Hannah stayed their loudest cheerleader, showing up uninvited with dumplings and TikTok trends to test on Adrian. Say, "It's giving corporate penance on camera just once, please." He refused. Lena recorded him anyway. Her therapist, Dr. Shaw, called Lena a recovering caretaker and Adrian a recovering fortress. Neither disagreed. On the 1-year anniversary of the lawsuit's dismissal, Lena and Adrian found themselves on the courthouse steps again. No cameras this time. Just them, coffee cups in hand, Moose tugging at his leash. "You know what I realized?" Lena said. "What's that?" "You never actually rescued me," Adrian smirked. Still waiting for my cape to arrive in the mail. You just offered me a ride, and you got in, he said. She sipped her coffee. Yeah, and for once, I'm glad I didn't overthink it. Moose barked at a passing pigeon as if to say same. That night, scrolling half distracted through her phone, Lena saw a trending hashtag. Hashtag the ride, not the rescue. It was everywhere, people posting about moments when they hadn't been saved, just given enough support to save themselves. A friend showing up at the EA, a stranger covering bus fare, a professor granting an extension without making it feel like charity. She showed Adrian. He read a few posts, eyes warm. Then he tilted his head. Looks like you started a movement. Looks like we started a meme, she corrected, grinning. Both can change lives, he said. She rolled her eyes. Don't start sounding like a TED Talk. Too late, he teased. Already bought the headset mic. Moose sneezed like a period at the end of the sentence. And maybe that was the truest ending, not the boardroom battles or the glossy fundraisers. Not even the headlines or the viral dog clips. But two people who'd learned that love didn't mean rescue. It meant rides offered, boundaries respected, and receipts always receipts. Slow, messy human love. The kind worth trending for the right reasons.